We want that land back. We want that land transferred to us.
Tonight, a family from the Enoch Cree Nation wants their land back. We'll tell you what the response is from the First Nation.
By renewing licenses for 5 years, our government is giving the industry the time that it needs.
The federal government is delaying the closure of the controversial open net salmon farms in BC.
We are no longer hiding in plain sight. We're coming out, we're raising awareness of who we are.
And a call to rewrite history. How one group wants the story of Frog Plain to be known as a win for the Métis people. Good evening, I'm Chris Najkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Last year, APTN told you about the story of Roberta Gladu. She's from the Enoch Cree Nation near Edmonton, who has been fighting to get her grandparents' land back. Today, that land is the Enoch Powwow Grounds. Now, more members are stepping forward with similar stories. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Roberta Gladu's grandfather, John Baptiste Yellowcalf, was incorrectly registered to the Beaver Lake Cree Nation by an Indian agent in 1940. Instead of the Enoch Cree Nation being illegitimate, his last name was registered as Gladu, his mother's maiden name. Roberta remembers playing outside her home in what is now the Enoch Powwow Grounds. She says her family was removed from the land when she was a child, and they were relocated to another part of Enoch. When her grandfather died in 2017, she discovered that an Indian agent error in 1940 incorrectly listed her grandfather as a member of Beaver Lake Cree Nation instead of Enoch. That error ended up costing the family their land. The land her family owned also has ongoing oil wells. There was a trust fund worth nearly $1 million that she wants her family to have. A lease agreement was signed by her grandfather and Indian Affairs.
We want that land back. We want that land transferred to us. And with my grandmother's and the wrongdoings that was done to our family.
She has proof. She has certificates of possession showing 2 large lots of land belonging to her family. Since last summer, she has been continuing to work.
When I talked about the inaccuracy of our record keeping, I've so far got a court order. My grandfather, John Baptiste Yellowcalf, is put on my dad's birth certificate.
And Roberta isn't alone. She has found 5 other families with similar stories of lost land. Marvin Ward says his family is also looking for land to be returned.
Well, we should be living on the land, but no, they're placing us all over the place. And it's land that where we should be living on. And if nobody speaks in behalf of our family, this is going to be swept under the rug.
Marilyn and Pauline Papin both want land back their family once owned, but lost due to inaccurate records. Marilyn's mother's band membership record was deleted.
They started taking away that land. My mom had land, and my Auntie Lily had land, and they just took it away.
And then when my son wanted to build his house on my land,
And me.
you know, like he, they told him no, that he'd have to build a house on band land only, not on my land. That was given to me. Like my mom left each one of us kids so many acres.
Roberta Gladu says Enoch leadership has not helped.
Straightening out those records and the hurt that we had to, they're harming us by not allowing us to correct our records as being landowners or even to connect our lineage as to who we are. Being refused to use Yellowcalf, excuse me, that's who we are.
Yep.
Gladu Yellowcalf.
APTN reached out to Chief Cody Thomas. He directed us to Membership Manager Sonia McDonald. She told APTN that she was unfamiliar with the situation because it developed before she started this job. The families here will continue to fight Enoch Cree Nation and the Crown to reclaim their lands. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Enoch Cree Nation.
Big news out of Ottawa this afternoon. The federal government has decided to extend licenses for British Columbia's open-net salmon fish farms for another 5 years. The Trudeau government made the announcement Wednesday afternoon. The Liberals had previously pledged to phase out fish farms by 2025 as they pose risks to wild Pacific salmon through disease and parasites. But the government now says operators need more time to transition to closed containment marine farms. The phase-out deadline has now been extended for June 30th, 2029. A number of First Nations in BC are involved in the open-net salmon fish farm industry.
By renewing licenses for 5 years, our government is giving the industry the time that it needs to either phase out its production or to turn to farming technologies in closed containment systems in a marine environment or on land. When those permits expire in 5 years, it is important to understand that only closed containment systems in water or on land will be considered for salmon aquaculture licenses in coastal BC.
A psychiatric nurse in Saskatchewan is calling for more cultural support when it comes to those experiencing homelessness. Bob Hughes has been a nurse in Regina for 45 years and has seen many Indigenous people fall into homelessness. Some have called for more police assistance when it comes to the unhoused, but Hughes says police won't solve the problem. The province of Saskatchewan announced a record investment of $547 million in this year's budget to support mental health and addiction services. Hughes is calling on the federal government to fund spaces that allow for cultural healing so that people do not end up on the streets. He says people can start helping others today by simply changing the way they think.
We have to take part in helping people with the trauma, helping people through, not throwing people away, not telling them to get the hell out of our neighborhood. We need to reach out to another human being and do our part.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. When we return, we'll tell you about the first environmental justice law in Canada and how it could one day assist First Nations against industry. We're back in about 3 minutes. Welcome back. An act that aims to tackle environmental racism will soon become law. Green Party leader Elizabeth May's private member's bill C-226 passed a third reading in the Senate earlier this month. It now awaits royal assent from the Governor General before officially becoming law. The bill calls on the Environment Minister to examine the links between race, socio-economic status, and environmental risk. Environmental racism refers to hazardous projects and pollution disproportionately impacting nearby Indigenous communities and people of color. Here's what Elizabeth May had to say about the legislation at a press conference in Ottawa.
We're extremely pleased, but it does create an obligation on the Minister of Environment to bring forward a national strategy to confront environmental racism. Just for context, the United States Environmental Protection Agency has had such a program since 1994.
Today, dozens of Red River Métis gathered at the Seven Oaks Park in Winnipeg to commemorate the anniversary of what they call the victory at Frog Plain. On this day in 1896, a small party of mostly Métis and First Nation men, led by Cuthbert Grant, declared victory after a firefight with Hudson's Bay Company Governor Robert Semple and his men. 20 of Semple's 28 men were killed. Only one Métis, a 16-year-old, was killed on Grant's side. The victory marked a significant win for Métis nationhood and their right to trade. But for years, the victory at Frog Plain was known as the Massacre or Battle of Seven Oaks in history books. At the celebration, leaders from the Manitoba Métis Federation spoke to the importance of recognizing it as a win for the Métis.
We are no longer hiding in plain sight. We're coming out, we're raising awareness of who we are, where we came from, where we're going. For generations, the Red River Métis faced scrutiny from the rest of Manitoba and Canada. The victory of Frog Plains was taught in schools as the Seven Oaks Massacre. That's what I was taught. Later called the Battle of Seven Oaks. Then a large difference in perception when a victory is called a battle or a massacre, as it paints us as villains. While the Red River Métis were fighting for our rights, in schools we were taught to be ashamed of who we are.
According to the Business Development Bank of Canada, or BDC, for 2 decades there has been a decline in the overall entrepreneur population. However, Indigenous and Black-led businesses are growing fast and counteracting this trend. This week, BDC announced it's providing up to $250 million, $50 million for financing and training programs, and an investment of $200 million for Indigenous and Black-led businesses. To talk more about this, we're joined now by Florence Mazurol, a BDC small business lender. Florence, thank you for chatting with us about this great opportunity for Indigenous entrepreneurs. My first question is, this $200 million in funding for Indigenous businesses, how can someone apply for that funding, and explain why this funding is so desperately needed?
Well, you and I both know that Indigenous entrepreneurs have been underserved. They haven't been cared for properly over time. We at BDC, I've been at BDC for 20 years now, and I've been doing Indigenous entrepreneur loans for 20 years at BDC. Wow. This is something new. The banks recently rolled out an inclusive entrepreneurship unit. I am a member of it, and our job is to care for Indigenous and Black entrepreneurs. I care specifically for Indigenous entrepreneurs. The $250 million announcement comes in 2 parts. The first $200 million is 2 new investment platforms to support Indigenous and Black-led businesses, which we know are chronologically underfunded. These entrepreneurs, and it hasn't stopped, they're still underfunded because of who they are. This is changing now. The BDC has always been committed to Indigenous Canada. The other loan is coming from our new inclusive entrepreneurship unit. It's an inclusive loan. We provide up to $350,000 in lending, and we're kind of focusing more on the $25,000 to $100,000. We can go up to $350,000. But the beauty of that is that a portion of that, and you're talking about that $50,000, that's that particular Indigenous entrepreneurship loan, the inclusive loan. And what we do within that loan is something different than our traditional loan. When you get a loan from BDC under this envelope, you get 2 different tiers of education. The first one is through our existing platform, where you can take 4 to 12 courses at your own pace and learn from people talking to you and teaching you and talking at your own level. Actually, I'm one of the people who has actually used some of the things that I've been there to teach. The second tier is what I find incredibly attractive. We all know how expensive consulting is, advisory services. Entrepreneurs who have this loan can get up to 15 hours complimentary services from like-minded people. So when you're an Indigenous entrepreneur, you will have an Indigenous advisor. If you're a Black entrepreneur, you will have a Black advisor. So the BDC's ongoing commitment to Indigenous Canada and underserved markets is bar none the best. Like I say, I've been here 20 years for a reason. Yeah. Very proud.
Yeah, right on. No, this is exciting news, big news for Indigenous businesses right across our country. Can you talk about how Indigenous businesses in Canada is one of the fastest growing segments right now, and why that is?
Well, I mean, part of it is the fact that over the past 20 years, these markets were underserved. People couldn't get financing. How do you grow a business bootstrapping using your own money? Now that funds are becoming available, we're very fortunate that we have a lot of dedicated Aboriginal or Indigenous financing institutions to provide those funds. The chartered banks are following suit. The BDC has always been at the table, but we're kind of raising the bar, so to speak. So they haven't been able to get financing. So now that they're able to get financing, they can grow. You know, in Canada, there are 100,000 fewer entrepreneurs in the past decade. Indigenous entrepreneurs are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in Canada right now. And when you talk about small business contributes 54% of Canada's GDP. That's massive. And Indigenous entrepreneurs are a huge part of that. You have to be there to service them. And with our inclusive entrepreneurship unit, you know, Indigenous entrepreneurs will be served by people who understand them, people who can have the conversation, who know what a sweat lodge is, who knows the challenges of business, who understand Indigenous ceremony, who understand the absolute commitment to community Indigenous entrepreneurs bring to the table. Those are the types of entrepreneurs I want to serve.
Yeah. No, this is all great, exciting news. And finally, really quickly, what is your words of wisdom for anyone thinking about starting their own business?
Not for the faint of heart. Entrepreneurs are the center of that entrepreneurial spider web. If you have functional expertise, I'm a plumber, I have daycare experience, I'm a designer, I'm an artist, that's your functional expertise. You will have to partner with people who have the other areas of expertise, or you can come to the BDC for one of these inclusive loans and get the coaching you need to round that out. So you can't be afraid of it. You're going to work very hard. Your highs are going to be high. Your lows are going to be low. But the point is, those highs are yours. You built that business. You should be proud of that. And when you have a low, you know what? Don't be faint of heart on it. Think of it as a learning opportunity and take those things to springboard yourself to be better.
Mm-hmm. Well, Florence, thank you for chatting with us about this great opportunity for Indigenous businesses. We'll be sure to update our audience more when we hear more news about it.
Thank you very much.
What started out as a love at first sight in the 1960s, and how that couple's love story is still being remembered today. That story when we return. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. There was a storm brewing over Gitsagakla in the Gitsan Nation, and we can thank Clarence Jones for capturing this photo and sharing it with all of us. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over on the East Coast, Charlottetown 31, Halifax 33. The Grand River 16, Maine 17. Quebec City 30, Val-d'Or 24. Hot streak still on Ontario, Toronto 31, Peterborough 30. Timmins 25, Sioux Lookout 23. Churchill 15, Thompson 20. Winnipeg 24, Barons River 20. Swift Current 22, Yorkton 20. Northern Saskatchewan, Stony Rapids 24, Buffalo Narrows 22. Northern Alberta, High Level 27, Grand Prairie 24. Lethbridge 22, Edmonton 23. Campbell River 26, Bella Coola 26. Dease Lake 23, Prince Rupert 15. Beaver Creek 20, Old Crow 16. Yellowknife 19, Norman Wells 18. Inuvik 9, Colville Lake 14. Baker Lake 15, Cambridge Bay 5. Iqaluit 5, Resolute 3. It all began with a first glance on a streetcar in 1960 that flourished into a romance for the ages. That love story has since been featured in a book and is now on a transit streetcar in downtown Toronto. APTN's Tina House spoke with the daughter of that couple and joins us from North Vancouver to tell us how it all happened.
Thank you. We're here at Ambleside Beach, North Vancouver, joined by Elaine Bomberry. Elaine, nice to see you again.
You too, T. Always good to see you.
Tell me about what you've been up to, and please tell me more about Res Rocket Romance.
It was an amazing story that I wrote about my parents' love story, how they met on a streetcar in Toronto in this book, Indigenous Toronto. I had no idea that it would become this big thing. And thanks to Denise McLeod at the Toronto Transit Commission, she said that she wanted to showcase our story translated into artwork that would be wrapped around a streetcar. Like, I could never have imagined that this would happen. And when we made it happen, she gifted me this beautiful little pendant with a Toronto Transit Commission token beaded. But yeah, so my family got to come, most of my family anyway, so it was really a spectacular day. It was just a legacy for, you know, really for my family.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about that romance. Tell me about your parents.
Oh my gosh, my dad was already on the College Street streetcar, and he was on his way to a dance. Back in the day, this is 1960, they would have North American Indian Club dances. And my mom got on a few stops after him, and when he saw her come on the streetcar, he said she was the most, he envisioned her in a wedding dress, like without even knowing her or her name. And then my mom said, when she looked at him, he was the most handsomest Indian man she ever saw. And so she was disappointed. He got off a couple stops before her, but they ended up at the same dance. My dad was a volunteer bartender for that event. And my mom had a date that night, but he never showed up. So they got to talking, shared numbers, and 4 months later, my dad proposed to my mother on that same streetcar. So hence the name Res Rocket Romance.
Amazing. And now the streetcars in Toronto are now wrapped with the images of your family, your brother, your sisters, your mom and dad, their wedding day. What was that moment like when you saw that streetcar?
Oh, it was so overwhelming. I felt my mom's spirit. You know, she's been gone since 2000. She passed away from breast cancer. But it was just, oh, it's so meaningful. And to have my dad, he's 88 years old, to make the trip to Toronto for the ride, it was spectacular. It really was. And my great nieces, you know, my great niece and great nephews were there, and my nephews and my sister, you know, it was just amazing.
Incredible. What a story. What did your dad say when he saw it?
It's all good. That's it.
Pete, a man of very few words.
Very few words. Yeah, that's my dad. Love him so much.
Incredible. So people riding the transit streetcar in Toronto can see this beautiful images?
Yeah, it's just the one streetcar, right? It's the College Street streetcar. So if anyone's riding it, please take a picture of yourself. Hashtag Res Rocket Romance, I guess. I don't know what else to say.
Amazing. Congratulations. And what an amazing opportunity and moment for your family.
Thanks.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Back to you in the studio.
Yeah, watch my God.
It's all good indeed. A world-renowned water rights activist has been honored with a stamp by Canada Post. The Crown Corporation held a ceremony in Thunder Bay on Tuesday to unveil the stamp of Anishinaabe elder Josephine Mandamin. Mandamin co-founded the Mother Earth Water Walk movement to promote water rights for Indigenous communities. Known as Grandmother Water Walker, Mandamin trekked more than 25,000 kilometers to draw attention to issues of water pollution and environmental degradation in the Great Lakes and on First Nations reserves across the country. Mandamin was born in 1942 on the Wickwamquan unceded territory on Manitoulin Islands. She passed away in 2019. This is the second stamp released this month to honor National Indigenous Peoples Day. A stamp with Enoch singer-filmmaker Ella Sappi was unveiled last week. A stamp honoring Métis artist and environmentalist Christy Belcourt will be unveiled next week. And that's our national newscast for this Wednesday, June 19th. A shout out to the Oilers in last night's game. They beat the Panthers again and are now dragging them back to Edmonton for the Game 6. Great job, Oilers. From everyone here in our HQ in Winnipeg and from our reporters across the country. Hi, miigwech, masichol. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again.